Welcome back into another rectangular table discussion. This time we're talking WandaVision. What were your thoughts on that first couple episodes?
It's obvious there's some kind of like magic or spell happening, and they're not aware of it, and we're not. We've got to unfold it, like solve the mystery as the season goes. I think it's also a chance for them to spoof a bunch of classic sitcom stuff every episode, kind of the way Scott Pilgrim does with video games. So we'll see what tropes they lampoon as they probably progress through time as the season progresses. In the comics, Wanda has gone crazy and altered all of reality around her. The House of M storyline is her going crazy and creating a reality where like Magneto is king of the world and like people that were dead were back now. So it might be mishmashing a bunch of stuff together about like that.
They kind of tease some sort of guy with a hazmat suit. Do you have any thoughts on that?
My first thinking was like that's an aim, like the Advanced Idea Mechanics people wear hazmat type suits. And also, the Radioactive Man wore a hazmat suit for a little bit, who was a ongoing Avengers villain.
Do you think that the Catherine Hahn character is going to end up being a villain somehow?
She's the one that they've been saying is Agatha Harkness.
You know Marvel a lot better than I do. I thought I read or watched some sort of YouTube video where they were saying that Agnes or whatever, the neighbor that came in, Catherine Hahn's character, I thought somebody...
Agnes would be Agatha Harkness. There are a couple gaps in my, Avengers history, but, Agatha Harkness is the one that teaches Wanda how to do magic in, West Coast Avengers in, the 80s, and I think she, at some point, turns on her. Yeah, she's probably going to end up being Agatha Harkness.
I thought I read that this episode, or not this first two episodes, but this show, I thought I read somewhere or watched something on YouTube that was saying that this show is in connection with the new Spider-Man movie coming out, and it's also going to somehow connect with the Multiverse of Madness and Doctor Strange. I thought I read or somebody gave a scoop that Doctor Strange is probably going to cameo in this show at some point, or somehow this show will affect what goes on in the Multiverse of Madness Doctor Strange movie, because I thought Kevin Feige was kind of saying that Spider-Man 3, or the newest Tom Holland Spider-Man, is kind of its own mini trilogy with this show in Doctor Strange 2. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So it'll probably set stuff up for multiverse type shenanigans. And yeah, I think that we know that the other dimensions of Spider-Man and past Spider-Man are making cameos in the Homecoming 3, and then I think that's going to fold over into Doctor Strange dimension hopping. And then I think ultimately, so they were teasing a bunch of stuff about the alarm clock, and they were saying that the alarm clock ends on 117, and Avengers 117 is the start of the Avengers Defenders crossover war. So they're probably going to set up that in some capacity as the next phase or wave of Avengers movies. And then also in that, Dormammu tries to trick Loki into shifting the world into the Dark Dimension because he got tricked into promising not to invade Earth, but if Earth is in his dimension, he can, corrupt it or whatever. So then there's also a Loki show, so, the Loki show will probably play into that. There will probably be, more hints of Dormammu-type stuff going on in this show, and he might be the Thanos, the next Thanos for a little bit.
I wondered if Chadwick Boseman passing in real life affected how they wanted to roll out the X-Men, because a lot of people were thinking that Storm would show up in that, but now that T'Challa, the actor for T'Challa, is gone, they went in a different direction and they're making Shuri Black Panther, so do you think they could use this show to roll out any of the MCU X-Men, or no?
I thought they were not going to do X-Men for a couple years, and that they were going to try to do Fantastic Four before X-Men. And Fantastic Four is always reality and dimension hopping, so it would they would be maybe a more, I guess, logical choice for more of a fit for dimension hopping stuff. I think they're trying to wait to do because X-Men has been done more successfully than Fantastic Four, and they're trying to let a few years pass before so that they can let somebody be Wolverine that isn't Hugh Jackman. if this is like a House of M related thing, there might be some like riff on like the No More Mutants thing where like in this she's like, yes, more mutants in some way. Hopefully it doesn't feel forced.
Didn't they canonically reverse course and say that Wanda and Quicksilver, didn't they say that they're no longer Magneto's kids? Didn't they kind of
for a while they were assumed to be Magneto's kids, but then when Disney bought Marvel and Disney could use X-Men stuff and they wanted to build their own like film empire that didn't involve the X-Men, they kind of switched it where like they were gene engineered or something by the High Evolutionary, who might show up in some capacity too. And also, now that I think of it, that Strucker timepiece commercial is making me think that like because they were originally captured by Strucker in the like Avengers 2 and like being experimented on, he's like recaptured them or something, and she's in some like dream machine or something.
I definitely got kind of a Truman Show vibe from the show, where we're watching a show within a show kind of thing, and right before it rolls to the credits, it shows like a credits before the credits for this show. Do you have any theories as to what that voice was that she heard through the radio when it was like, Wanda, who's doing this to you, Wanda? Do you think that was an actual person that was somehow like breaking this barrier, or do you think that was somehow like in Wanda's own mind that she was hearing something that manifested through that radio, and that's how she sort of logically did that?
She has like a failsafe within her subconscious, snap her out of.
I was watching Young Justice recently, and there was a training exercise where Martian Manhunter put all of them under, and then they were all mind-linked through Miss Martian. They were basically meant to be put through all these tests where things got progressively harder and harder and harder. Ultimately, there was something that happened that caused their subconscious to think that what they were in was actually real, even though they were supposed to know going in and it was a training exercise. So even though it was never actually going to be in peril, they felt like it was, and so there was a traumatic event that made everybody's mind link snap, just because I think Miss Martian's thing was snapped. So I'm wondering if it's a similar kind of concept where somehow or other, kind of like you said, Scarlet Witch is being controlled or like she's captured somehow. I think it could be possible that what we're watching is something that's playing out in her mind and she's in a lab or something unconscious this whole time. I'm wondering if it's a similar kind of concept to that. Are you following what I'm saying or not really?
I think so. She can warp reality itself in the comics so that, like, House of M, like, she manifested it into real with her mind. And they also alluded to, like, her being pregnant, which she, like, manifested, like, her and Vision had twins that, like, out of magic, that they've gone back and forth on, like, how exactly that happened, but those twins become Speed and Wiccan from the Young Avengers.
Do you think they somehow entered a different dimension and that's why they're not really sure? Because it almost sounds like they have amnesia, or it almost sounds like they don't really know what's going on. They're like, yeah, this is our reality now and we're dealing with it.
They're in some kind of dream reality, yeah.
Is Wanda in some sort of lab? Is somebody somehow using some sort of microbe to like probe her brain and then make her sort of like manipulate her brain to do these powers in her subconscious? And like Vision might not actually be there, but Vision's kind of like her, like she kind of manifested Vision in this sort of dream reality or in this sort of chamber.
Vision's like a totem, like Inception.
Yeah, like Vision might not truly be there, but they made Wanda and Vision connected in the movies, so she manifested that as sort of like a coping mechanism, or to, I guess, she subconsciously tried to make sense of what was going on, and I think that's kind of similar to what happened in Young Justice. Something happened that was so traumatizing in their training session that snapped their sense of that it's a training and it felt real, and therefore that disconnected everybody's mental connection. In this case, I think it's just Wanda being experimented upon or whatever, but I'm wondering if she's captured, kind of like what she said, and we're watching sort of like what's going on in her subconscious through some sort of experimentation that they're doing.
In the House of M story, it's like they all just wake up one day and it's like this, and as far as they know, it's always been like this. But then, like, some people that have conditions, like, I think Wolverine is one of the first people to realize, like, because he's been, like, brainwashed so many times, like, well, something isn't right, something's off, like, stuff is off. This isn't how it's supposed to be. And they kind of, like, piece it together that, like, all these associations that related to Wanda in some way or what's going on. In the comics, like, existence is different because she willed it to be different. She, like, altered reality at a fundamental level, and they had to, like, get to her and, like, convince her that it was, she had to, like, put it back.
So do you think Wanda purposely, deliberately created this alt reality and then somehow forgot that she did that? Or do you think somebody made her somehow do it?
Yeah, that I'm not sure. There's like a Batman the Animated Series episode, like he gets kidnapped and hooked up to a dream machine where he's got like a perfect life and then he realizes it's wrong because he can't read. She could be trapped in something that's like manipulating her mind, or she got like caught in a situation that's made her shut down and think different things that are then becoming things.
I guess what's really intriguing to me is just how it seems like they don't really know why they're there or why things are happening the way they are, but they're kind of just accepting what it is. So I guess that's what makes me think that somebody's somehow manipulating her, somebody somehow wiped her mind, or somehow somebody created some sort of mental block on the events preceding, I guess, this show. At the same time, like, I wonder what that hazmat thing was. That obviously had to be a tease. She saw that or whatever in this reality, and then she's like, nope, and then flipped it back to just her and Vision together. So I don't know if somebody made her see that and be like, no, or what. There's also kind of the thing in the Avengers movies where it felt like Wanda and Vision felt like they couldn't be together, and so that's why I'm wondering if she consciously did this, so it's like this perfect dream world where Vision and Wanda can be together or whatever.
Or someone's like sedating her and like giving her like perfect life to keep her distracted and like away from fighting them because she's too powerful to handle.
I think she's probably under the control of Hydra, and I think that Strucker Watch or whatever was sort of a tease that they're the ones behind this. I'm just curious if she's more powerful than what Hydra's able to use to kind of keep her under. I'm just really curious as to if that thing she heard on the radio was her fighting off whatever thing is suppressing her, so to speak, or if that's something that the Hydra agents are putting there to keep her confused, adding extra layers to their, I guess, containment, or I guess their virtual simulation or whatever. I'm just curious if that's something they did or if that's something that somebody else is doing from the outside to try to get to her, knowing that she's somehow under control of somebody else. There are a lot of different rabbit holes this could go. I'm just curious which one you're leaning toward at this point.
I mean, that's probably some kind of like good guy trying to get to her. There's always the like, oh, people would be expecting that, so we gotta do like an even bigger twist.
I also think you and I think more critically than some of the average fans that might be watching this. I think it's going to be kind of like how in Mandalorian we had these crazy rabbit hole theories that would have been really good plot devices, but they never ended up coming to fruition, probably because it would have been overly complicated for some of the audience. You got to remember there are probably like 6 and 7, 8-year-olds watching this, maybe even younger, so they can't make it overly convoluted. Do you have any theories as to what that voice was, though? I don't know if you answered that earlier on.
Another, like, plot thread from, like, House of M, which I haven't read in over 10 years. Hawkeye had died. Wanda had a meltdown that killed a bunch of people. Like, it drove She-Hulk crazy, and, like, She-Hulk ripped Vision in half, and, like, Hawkeye died, and then Hawkeye was, like, back all of a sudden. So, like, people that were gone are, like, back in this reality, and it's like, are they gone? Are they back? Hawkeye's like a character that's getting a show.
I thought the Hawkeye show was supposed to center around his daughter, though.
Well, it's not his daughter. It's like, she's like a Robin Hawkeye that he, like, adopts, kind of.
That voice, now that I think about it, now that you mentioned Hawkeye, it did kind of sound like Jeremy Renner, I guess, but my first thought when watching was that Bucky? Because I know Falcon and Winter Soldier is a show that's coming out at some point, too. So I thought it could either be Falcon or it could be Bucky. I couldn't really decipher. You would think it would be somebody that was kind of on the Avengers, and it would be somebody that she might have felt closer to in that X-Men Evolution show, which came out in the early 2000s. The Scarlet Witch in that show was kind of like mentally unstable.
She is in the comics.
This could be her own doing, and then she kind of created a mental block, forgetting that she's the one that created all of this. Because she's mentally unstable, she did something on a whim like this, and then maybe somebody else is trying to break through and make her, I guess, come back to...
That's what House of M is, and that's, like, that was... I think that played a big role in, like, Avengers Disassembled.
They also made a big deal about how when she was with that cul-de-sac group meeting, how she was like, I promise you, I mean nobody, no harm, kind of thing. So I don't know if that was sort of a foreshadow, like, this is all her fault, and so she's kind of convinced herself that she's not at fault, and she's just an innocent bystander in this reality that she's all of a sudden a part of, but really, maybe she is the one that created it, or at the same time...
She's trying to convince herself that, as much as she's trying to convince the...
Exactly. Do you have any thoughts as to, like, what the next episode 3 of the series will entail?
We might figure out who the hazmat guy is. Like, is that some kind of glitch in the Matrix or something? Or is that or is he a guy trying to get her out? Stuff is probably going to start to gradually be colored in more.
Which one are you leaning more toward? Do you think that voice was something that was meant to keep her occupied? Or do you think it's somebody from externally reaching out? Which one of those two scenarios? Because I think that would make this story go two different ways.
Like, it's probably someone trying to save her.
Marvel likes to really go do, like, the full circle kind of thing, and also do, like, callbacks to prior things that they've done, especially in the MCU. Hearing that, it kind of kept making me think back to Falcon being, like, Cap on your left kind of thing, where it's like, maybe it's not Bucky or maybe it's not Falcon, but it's that kind of thing where...
Falcon saying Cap on your left was a callback to, like, in Captain America 2 when he's, like, super fast and he keeps lapping him.
I agree, but at the same time, Cap wasn't expecting anybody to show up. It was all of a sudden, like, the cavalry had arrived, and that was his way of kind of reaching out, like, yeah, I'm here. I don't know if it's kind of a reference to that. Maybe I'm just making up stuff. We both understand how much the MCU really likes to bring things full circle and really likes to call back to things they've done prior. Just me thinking about that, I don't know if it's Winter Soldier or Falcon. I don't know who it is. I could see that being somebody that Scarlet Witch somehow knew or whatever. Somehow someone she's close with, and that's them, like you said, reaching out. I guess that line of thinking would lend more credence to the fact that she's captured by somebody.
Yeah, either she's captured or there's some, like, big fight going on in the mid, like, and this is, like, going on in her head while she's like, well, there's a big fight going on around her and she's, like, comatose and someone's trying to be like, what'd they do?
She's in some sort of manually induced coma or dream world that was created by somebody like a Dormammu, like you said, or maybe, probably not Loki, but I think the Loki show has to do with some sort of, like, alt reality where he's kind of trying to figure out. The preview for that kind of made it seem like he was in some sort of different reality, or, like, I think his show harkens back to, like, in Endgame when he took the cube or whatever.
I think that is that Loki. It's like that the Loki that disappeared with that. You're now following his adventures, and, like, the prime quote-unquote Loki may or may not be dead. We don't really care about him anymore. It's this, like, still kind of evil one who's now going off and doing his own shenanigans and, like, messing up the time stream.
Yeah, the Loki that teamed up with Thor in Thor Ragnarok died on the helicarrier thing when Thanos captured them and took the whatever stone it was. Probably the Tesseract, right? Or no, what stone did he take? I don't even remember. It doesn't much matter which stone it was that he took at the beginning of Infinity War, but the point was Loki ended up dying, and that Loki, I think, is canonically dead, but then when they went back in time to 2012, that Loki picked up the Tesseract and warped somewhere. It could also be that Loki's the one that's making all this happen, like, he's kind of deceptive like that, so it could be his fault that this is all happening to Wanda and she doesn't really know why.
That could be true, too.
Do you think this could have anything to do with Enchantress? Or not really?
Oh, this could be how they introduced her as well, yeah. There are plenty of Asgardian villains that can, mind control people.
It sounds like for the most part we're on the same page with where we think this might be going, or we kind of have similar ideas. The last thing I could think is maybe this has something to do with MODOK.
He's a character they could introduce. Loki is somebody that they're going to have to incorporate in more because everybody likes him and he's getting a show. There are plenty of gods and amulets and things that from Asgard that can mind control people. AIM/Hydra has plenty of scientists that can inject psychotropic hallucinogens into Wanda to make her be doing this. Or they could just be fighting somebody that maybe they kill Vision and it causes her to have a meltdown that is causing all of this.
Do you think Vision could be the one that's doing this to her? Do you think this could be the kind of thing where maybe all of a sudden Ultron is back? Because Ultron does have a habit of being reassembled, and every once in a while basically brings the Earth to the edge of oblivion because he basically hacks all the nukes in the world and aims them all at Earth. That's been a common plot line that they've done in at least the animated shows and Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes that they did on Disney XD. That was an arc for a few episodes where they did that.
Yeah, I guess they could bring him back. He seems like one of the less likely people that they would bring back.
It could be kind of like how Star Wars is trying to make up for the sequels. Maybe they're trying to fix how they botched Ultron so badly and give him a redemption arc. Also kind of like how in Star Wars, how they made Maul not just get chopped in half. They brought him back and gave him a better redemption arc. To kind of wrap up this episode, I was going to ask you a completely unrelated hypothetical question just because a fan of the show that we both know mentioned this the other day. For purposes of anonymity, we'll call this person Imalayo Jimbo Jayo. They had said that Count Dooku and Saruman have the same character arc. I was curious what your thoughts are on that.
They're the same actor. And I think they put him into that trilogy because of Lord of the Rings. But they do kind of have the same character, the exact same character arc, don't they? They pretty much are the same character.
I think that was the point that this person was trying to make, is that they are very similar. There is a lot of parallels between the two. The fact that they are both Christopher Lee, but also they were both kind of disillusioned with the sort of quote-unquote hero side. I said that they're not exactly the same because Count Dooku was trained by Yoda, and I don't know who would have been a Grandmaster type mentor for Saruman. And I also said I thought Saruman was kind of more of just a sellout because he felt like the hero side had no chance. Dooku kind of had his own ideas, and he kind of was disillusioned with the Jedi, and it fit his own narrative to align himself with Sidious. I felt like Saruman was just trying to save himself by aligning with Sauron. I felt like they were a little bit different, but yeah, just sort of a once hero turned...
Wow, one's got a beard and the other one doesn't. One wears white and one wears black.
Well, I was just curious your thoughts on that, so it sounds like you agree with this person.
I remember seeing Attack of the Clones the first time being like, oh, he's in this as the exact same character that he played.
Saruman had the massive orc army / Uruk-hai army, and Dooku organized the massive droid army that the Separatists used to forcefully do their agenda. So yeah, I mean, in a way, this point that was made by this person, it was a good point. It's just, since it's somebody we both know and it's something that recently was said to me, I promised I would bring it up on the show. So I wanted to close with that because I thought it was interesting.